All right. Well, good afternoon or morning or whatever time it is for y'all who are watching this. To my classmates, I hope that y'all are having a good week, and as we approach Thanksgiving and the end of the class, that we can all get some rest and some time with family or friends. So for my project, I chose a virtual option, and there's a ministry. My name is Jake Ankenbrandt, by the way. I live in Thomasville, Georgia, South Georgia, and I work for Young Life. I'm pursuing my MAML degree, MAML, Master's of Ministry Leadership degree from Fuller, just to put that in there. So in Thomasville, there's this ministry called Project Backyard, and what they do is they address the issue of poverty, the ethic of poverty, and they do a lot of outreach ministry in our community. They do a lot of service projects to serve those who are dealing with extreme poverty in our community. And so I talked to Brian Watt, who is the head of Project Backyard in Thomasville. He's the owner or the founder of Project Backyard. It's a nonprofit. He doesn't own it. So he and I had a phone conversation, and I have in the past volunteered with Project Backyard, so I have seen in person what they do. I did not go to one in the last couple months since this class has started, so the in-person option wasn't an option. But I have gotten to see it in person before. So their big thing that they do is their kind of big yearly thing that they do to address the poverty, to serve our community, is they do a big Thanksgiving Day meal service where they have about 1,200 volunteers every year. I think it went down a little bit during COVID, but before that it was about 1,200 every year of volunteers who come on the day before Thanksgiving and the day of Thanksgiving to prepare meals and then to deliver them to people all over Thomas County. And it's a really incredible thing. They go all over the place to every community, especially the ones that are on the margins, that are dealing with extreme poverty. And it's a really cool thing. And then throughout the year, they do monthly events, service projects for people to come and volunteer to serve our community. And the people who they serve, like I said, are experiencing poverty. And I would say they do a pretty good job of addressing poverty. Brian, the founder, had some thoughts that they're not quite where they want to be, and I'll hit on that later. But so that's kind of just an idea of what Project Backyard is, kind of what their events look like, and what they address in our community. It's a really cool thing. So as far as the methodologies that they use, and how they address, how in action how they address poverty is, like I said, with their service projects. But something that Brian said when we were talking that really stuck out to me was that they believe in the power of relationship when it comes to taking on these kind of injustices of poverty in our community. And I was really intrigued by that, and I asked him to kind of expound on it. He said, "We oftentimes plan projects that promote interaction between those who are serving and those who are being served. There's something powerful that happens when a volunteer is able to put a face with a name or to hear the story of someone who is struggling." And I just think that is absolutely dead on. I think that, relationships are so important for what we do as believers, as ministers of the gospel, is to form meaningful relationships with people. And I think that people aren't going to care what we have to say to them about Jesus, or, they're not going to care about the fact that we are bringing them food if they don't know that we care about them first. I think people want to be loved and to belong, and if they feel like, our service is coming out of a place anywhere other than love, I feel like it won't be received as well. So I really appreciated that Project Backyard puts a premium on making relationships with people. And there's a cool story that he told me about a woman who, they were painting. One of their projects was they were painting a trailer for somebody who lived in a trailer park who needed help with their house, and their next door neighbor, this woman named Emily, said, "When are you going to paint my house?" And Brian was like, we'll do it tomorrow. So they came back, and Emily, after they painted Emily's trailer, said that Emily came and told Brian, the founder, said, my husband had given up on people and life for that matter, but you guys helped show him that there is still good and light in this world. And I just think that without, them being open to, relationships and getting to know people and, adapting, that they might not have had the chance to impact the life of Emily and her husband, and her family. So I think that was a really cool thing. My personal reflection on my experience of interviewing Brian and having gone in the past, I feel like Project Backyard does a pretty good job, although Brian did raise a good question that I think is worth asking of, are we really helping? He feels that while, what they do is, a blessing to people. Let me find this note. He said, we have a family that we've been helping for over 6 years now, and it's been a blessing to them. However, they are still in the same financial situation today as they were 6 years ago. My question is there more that we can do to help people help themselves to get out of the cycle of poverty? So Brian really has, noticed and realized that, while they are a blessing to people, providing meals and providing service to people in our community, a lot of times it's just a Band-Aid on top of a deeper issue, that this cycle of poverty is hard to break. And so Brian is now in the process with his board and the rest of his staff of figuring out how do we make a deeper impact in our community instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it once a month and once a year. And I think that the old adage of, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, but teach a man how to fish, and he'll be fed forever, And so I think that they are trying to figure out how to equip people to care for themselves, instead of just receiving charity. I think too that really adds a level of dignity. I think, as believers, we're called to provide and to give people dignity, which is what Jesus did so well. To the people on the margins that I think our society has stopped doing. I think that, people who are suffering this extreme poverty don't have much sense of dignity in their lives. And so Brian and his organization are working to address that, which I thought was really cool. I think that my mindset has changed. So yeah, it's a huge blessing to give and to provide these services for people, but I think that we have to think if there's a deeper way to help, to set them up for more future success instead of just a temporary Band-Aid. So that was really impactful for me as I reflect on this experience. And finally, as far as prayer goes, I think Brian said there's a volunteer-driven organization that they've taken a pretty big hit with their volunteer numbers. I think, with COVID, people are a little bit more hesitant to say yes to coming out and volunteering and being around large groups of people. I would say that in the last several months that has gotten better. He said that, last Thanksgiving was a rough year because of, the pandemic was still in relatively full swing. And it feels now like it's starting to recede a little bit. So they're expecting a lot bigger group next week at their Thanksgiving gathering. But so you can pray for that, pray for their volunteers to come back. And also they've had a lot of trouble with, discerning if, are they really helping in going, is it putting people at risk who they're helping if with this COVID, pandemic. So they don't want to deliver food to a family and then give them COVID if they didn't know they had it or things like that. And so they're trying to kind of discern what that looks like for them. Is it safe for them to be doing these service projects in people's homes, on people's property, giving them food, whatever it may be. So you can pray for that as well. Brian was pretty excited about the prospect of some awareness being raised for his organization, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have done it. So thank you so much for listening.